Welcome to Perfectly Paranormal, episode 19. My name's Annaschmidt, and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons, and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. And today we're diving headfirst into paranormal addiction and how the detrimental mindset, behaviours and actions that come with this obsession can literally turn people's lives upside down. And I'm going to be sharing some information first today and then the real life experiences that I've witnessed in my clients, and you will understand the changes in people's personalities and in their ways of thinking. So let's look at what is paranormal addiction. So from my personal perspective and what I see in society and within some of my clients, paranormal addiction is an obsession with the supernatural world around us. Paranormal addiction is real. And how do I know this? Is simply because I am a paranormal addict. I think I was born a paranormal addict. I've just been fascinated with the paranormal world around us since childhood. There's no other way to say it. But I channel my addiction into educating the public and helping people to understand why these paranormal beings are here, what they're up to, how they affect us, and also in helping people improve their lives. So paranormal addicts have a fixation on all aspects of the unseen world around us. They're totally immersed in wanting to experience supernatural happenings, to fulfil a deep need for the adrenaline rush connected to searching for invisible beings and discovering the unknown realms. And I have to tell you, it can be quite intoxicating. I know that when I get on a paranormal high, as I call it, I get quite hyperactive. So when I'm doing my paranormal house clearing work or working with a client for a clearing, I have to be finished work by 5 p.m. because it takes me about 4 hours for my energy to settle back to a normal level and for me then to be able to go to bed and have a good night's sleep, because I literally get a high. My voice is heightened, my thinking is heightened, my mind function is heightened. It's quite hard to explain unless you actually experience it yourself. So obsessive curiosity about non-living beings who coexist in the earth realm creates a strong attraction for dark energy beings to these people and in their homes, and it can be quite a big problem. Because of the work that I do with paranormal beings every day through client work, I've always got others coming into my home to observe me. They are simply watching what I'm doing, but their presence makes me feel, it puts my spidey senses on edge. I get brain fog, I feel a little bit disrupted in the mind, my walking can become a little bit disorientated. They're some of my symptoms of paranormal beings in the home. But I've created this because of my paranormal addiction. And it is part of my life, and it's how I educate people about the signs and symptoms of these beings being around us. So a friend of mine here in Tasmania told me an interesting little story. He said that all the paranormal happenings stopped in his home when his partner left. She was the addict, constantly watching paranormal investigations, reading books, talking about the paranormal, researching ghosts and entities and demons and talking about it non-stop. And then strange occurrences started happening in their home, and this heightened her addiction. And she was now filming these unusual phenomena in the home. And my friend told me that when she left, it simply all stopped. because she was the draw card. Well, it stopped in that home. But I have to tell you that if she kept up with her paranormal addiction, the paranormal beings are going to find her no matter where she goes. Now, the emotions of fear, shock, paranoia, and horror excite some individuals. And these emotions are a prime draw card for dark energy beings. There are constant behaviour patterns in people who have a secret or public obsession and fascination about the supernatural and interacting with paranormal beings. They imagine wild, thrilling experiences, which in truth actually terrify them. The negative emotions attached to these experiences create problems in their daily lives, affecting behaviours, sleep patterns, mental and emotional patterns, relationships, and their perception of reality. And their behaviours have an outward effect on the people around them, possibly affecting partners, children, workmates, friends, and even their pets. Now, I often hear people openly talking about the excitement of experiencing dark entities, or even one man. Oh my goodness, I'll never forget it. I was on a ghost tour one night with a group of people, and this man openly said, "Come out, demons, and possess me." No one around him actually took much notice, but I did. I just looked at him. I didn't say anything because I knew that I couldn't change his perspective about what they're getting themselves into. These types of behaviours carry a low vibration, and these intentions are a prime feeding source for many of the demonic level beings that are in our environment. Now, like simply attracts like, and once these entities feel your desire for connection, they will find a way into your home, into your personal energy field, and into your mind. And they can be quite challenging to remove unless you know what you are doing. Paranormal addiction may also manifest symptoms such as delusional or manic behaviour, panic attacks, sleep deprivation, nightmares, anxiety, fear of being alone, or fear of the dark. Now, I'm not commenting on this from a medical perspective because I'm not a doctor, but I'm purely commenting as a professional energy clearer with many years of experience. And a lot of these symptoms that I've just outlined are symptoms that my clients have confided in me that they have experienced through their paranormal addictions. Now, this addiction can build up over time, sometimes triggering underlying mental health issues or long-term addiction to searching for spirits or dark energy beings in every dark corner of every place where that person goes. Now, it's healthy to have a curiosity and a very high level of respect for these beings. But if paranormal addiction takes over people's lives, it needs medical intervention. Often paranormal addicts don't think that they have a problem, and it can take a family intervention first to get the person to medical and mental health care. So a holistic approach covers all areas of the possible needs of the client. And it's essential to make sure that there aren't any underlying or hidden medical or mental health issues that are exacerbating the paranormal addiction within the client. Now, clearing disruptive energy beings depends on the client's genuine desire for them to be gone. I've worked with clients who are so hooked on extraterrestrials, dark or demonic beings, satanic practices. They don't know who they are without their addiction. Now, if you have a strong desire to experience dark or demonic beings, whether it be through satanic practices, using Ouija boards, going to seances, sooner or later you are going to get your wish. when people get hooked on paranormal TV shows, movies, books, activities, investigations, tour experiences, whether dark energy beings are known to be present in those locations or not, these people are opening themselves up to attracting lower vibrational beings into their personal energy field and sometimes into their home. Now, I must say that not everyone who uses a Ouija board or searches through abandoned buildings or participates in seances or ghost tours will attract dark energy beings. It 100% depends on the individual's mental and emotional and life experience factors that actually trigger mental and emotional episodes that attract dark energy beings. Because these dark or demonic beings don't actually create this addiction. It is already there. It is already underlying because of something that someone has gone through in their life. Like, I was born with mine. Whether you believe in past lives or not, I was born into this reality in this body to work with the paranormal. Right from I was old enough to be able to see beings that other people couldn't see, to hear them, to know that they were around. So that says to me that there wasn't any life experiences in this lifetime that triggered my paranormal addiction. It's something that has happened to me in a previous lifetime. Previous lifetimes are a whole nother episode of talking about the paranormal, which I will do in a future episode. Now, another aspect to think about is that many people are psychically open and they don't realise it. Now, another aspect to think about is that many people are psychically open and don't actually realise it. They don't openly believe in psychic, spiritual or dark entities. And some spiritual people think that they are immune from attracting these lower vibrational beings because they simply work with love and light. Love and light is only half of the energy in the universe. If you think about it, it's got to be balanced by the darkness. Okay, so if you're a spiritual worker, you're an energy worker, you do Reiki, sound therapy, feng shui, anything that is connected to working with energy, you're working with higher vibrational beings. But the lower vibrational beings are aware of you. This is where you need to have a healthy respect for them. Now, forewarned is forearmed. When you have the knowledge, when you have that self-awareness and you work on raising your vibration, you are less likely to attract darker energy beings. So let's move into our real life experiences, and I've called our first story, The Demon in the Blanket. Now, this story is a client-based study, and we shall call the person in this story Bob. Now, Bob was referred to me through two other professional energy clearers who had worked for Bob, but didn't seem to clear the energetic interference in Bob's home. Or so Bob said. Bob spun the same story for every energy clearer. And this was the first sign for me of some level of paranormal addiction. I have a strong awareness of people's mental states through the way they write their emails, the type of paranormal language that they use, the type of detail that they go into, and the way that they word their emails, the way that they repeat the language consistently through many emails. Quite often it's the number of emails or the number of messages that can show some level of mental health disturbance, and also, for me, as an energy worker, some level of paranormal addiction. So the repetition of paranormal information in a very dramatic way can be a cry for attention, a sign of mental or emotional health issues, and often a sign of loneliness. I often see people with these issues repeating stories of paranormal interference, horror, terror, and exaggerated emotional drama. Now, I'm not saying that this isn't real for some people, and it is, but the big but is that rational people will explain what is happening in their homes, and they don't repeat the same messages over and over and over again in a very dramatic way. They don't exaggerate it. They don't send dozens of emails all with the same information. Now, Bob was an extreme case. This is why I'm giving you Bob's case first, and we're going to look at a few different paranormal addiction cases. Now, I'm going to simplify his information for you, otherwise we're going to be here for hours. Now, Bob basically said that there was a demon in his bed coverings, specifically a blanket. And his cats were frightened constantly. They couldn't sleep. They looked worried. They looked stressed. They'd be hiding all the time. The other demons that were in the house, he said, were in his wardrobe and a few other items in the home. Now, I will note down all these details when I'm reading clients' emails or I'm talking to them in person, because it gives me a specific focus when I look into the person's home. I will go through every room. I will check the outbuildings, the front yard, the backyard, every floor of the home, including the basement. But these specific items were what I focused on first. Now, when I checked Bob's blanket and the other items, there were no demonic beings present. And as I conveyed this information to Bob through email, Bob didn't listen. He wasn't interested. He just kept going on and on and on about how he couldn't sleep and that the demons were hurting him and his cats. Now, I did clear some paranormal entities out of Bob's home who had been there from the previous owner's detrimental behaviours in the home. And I wrote a very detailed report outlining everything that I found in every room. Now, most people, 99% of people that I send a report to, will want to have a conversation afterwards. They're like, can we do an online platform? Can we do a phone conversation? Or we'll exchange a few emails, they'll ask a few questions. Bob did none of that. He totally ignored all the information that was sent and continued on with, I can't sleep, the demons are in my blanket, I keep washing my blanket, nothing is making a change. And I kept emailing Bob back saying, there are no demons in your blanket. From my perspective, through my pendulum dowsing that I have done every day for you for the last month, there are no demons in your blanket. Now again, Bob just continued to ignore the report details. And I constantly kindly stated in many emails that his home was free of all paranormal beings, himself and his cats also. And I really strongly suggested that it was time for Bob to seek mental health care and to look at what was creating his mental and emotional turmoil. All of this was totally ignored, and the emails continued. The demon in the blanket had now moved from the blanket to the mattress. And in this very long email, Bob told me about how he had to drag the mattress outside the house and that it was very expensive and very specialised, and he would sleep on the floor in his bedroom on just an old blanket that he'd found in the cupboard somewhere that he considered didn't have any demons in it. And Bob put all his clothing in tubs in the garage because he said that there were demons in the wardrobe. Now, I think you are getting the picture. There will be some paranormal beings that are drawn to a person, putting out this kind of negative vibration constantly. This says to me, now I'm not medically trained, but this says to me mental health issues. And I kept reiterating to Bob that Bob needed to seek mental health care. Please see your GP, get some blood tests done, get your health checks done. He said he had done this all beforehand. Now, there would only be 3 reasons now why these energy beings would still be present in Bob's house. Now, number 1, they're coming in to observe Bob because of his exaggerated negative behaviours. Number 2, because Bob's constantly thinking about the paranormal and putting that vibe out there. Remember what I said before about like attracts like? You think about them in this very focused, intentional way, they're going to come and check you out. That is what they do. Quite often they're in people's homes observing. I see them when I go to visit people, and I say to them in my mind, I am only here visiting my friends. I have no intention of interacting with you or removing you from this home. And this settles the beings, and then they just go on doing whatever they're doing. Now, number 3, because Bob has created more fear, more anxiety, more loneliness within himself, and this vibration within himself is coming out into the house. And it attracts these energetic beings. Because if you've listened to my podcast before, you'll hear me say that dark energy beings are simply energetic feeders. They feed off the vibrations that we create. It is as simple as that. Now, myself and the other energy clearers mentioned in this story today have strongly recommended that Bob seek mental health care. I was paid my standard fee, which is generally for a 3 to 4 day job, but I worked for Bob for a month and I did not charge Bob for the extra work I did. I wanted to solve Bob's problem that was in his home. And I got to the stage where I actually realised there's nothing in the home. I'm constantly checking and there are no paranormal beings there. It is something else. It is the paranormal addiction within Bob. And I do hope that Bob seeks help and can start to live the life that he needs to be happy. Now, our second story today is called A Mother's Paranormal Addiction. And this experience came to me through a work associate who contacted me about one of her clients who had paranormal happenings occurring within her family home. At night, the youngest child was being harassed by dark, shadowy beings knocking on his windows, and they were infecting his dreams with really horrible images. Now, the mother, who I shall call Kate, was experiencing her bed being jolted during the night, and the curtains would be rustling and moving of their own accord. And we did the debunking. There was no windows open, no pets present, and no family members playing tricks that could have caused the unusual movements in her bedroom. So paranormal phenomena was the only other suspected culprit. Now, this lady's overseas. She's in the United States. So I tuned into her home's energy and her son's energy field with Kate's permission. Now, there were indeed some troublesome energetic beings hiding in the darkest corners of the home, waiting for the family bedtime so that the games could begin. So I located the culprits, cleared their connection to the home, negotiated a solution with them, and removed the mischievous dark entities from that property. And the next night, the son's sleep patterns returned to normal, and Kate said that her bed and curtain issues ceased, literally just stopped. Now, this was a great outcome. Now, my work associate and I were emailing each other, and we'd given each other the thumbs up, and this case was solved, and we thought we won't be hearing from Kate again. But 2 weeks later, I receive another message from my work associate, and Kate is saying that the dark energy beings are back and that it's all happening again. Now, I've had a lot of experience with paranormal, as I keep saying, and people's addictions to the unknown world around us. Now, this 2-week reoccurrence period is a classic sign of supernatural addiction. I can't explain why I know that. It's just that a lot of my clients, I will get an email from them in 2 weeks' time. It's all happening again. It's almost like their brains haven't had time to reset yet. And they're still wanting that rush. They're wanting that adrenaline rush. Or, like I mentioned before, they don't know who they are without this paranormal addiction. Right? And that's mental health care. They really need to see doctors about that to help them get themselves back into a state of well-being. So back to Kate. Now, I was saying that this 2-week reoccurrence period is a classic sign of supernatural addiction, and the attention and the excitement that comes with the return of supposed spooky supernatural happenings. Now, some of these people thrive on the attention of energy clearing specialists. This was the case for Bob. And I talked to Bob about loneliness. And he shared a few things with me. And I'm like, you really need to see someone about this. You need more social interaction. Work on raising your vibration. See a doctor. Look at your health aspects. My work associate didn't know what to do with this client. Now, I talked about a few possibilities that could be happening here to help find an approach so that she could help her client long term. Now, I'm not medically trained, as I keep saying. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, and I'm only sharing what I've learned from my long-term personal and client-based observations and experiences with paranormal addiction. But here are some of the possible reasons for Kate's behaviour. Now, number one, Kate is fearful that every time her son has a bad dream, the paranormal activity is happening again. Her brain goes straight to creating these experiences out of fear of what happened in the past. I often find that it takes people's brains between 1 and 6 months to stop expecting dark energy happenings. Every time there's a bump on the wall or a scratch or a creak in the night, or they have a terrible dream. Sometimes we just have nightmares. There's lots of other reasons why they could be occurring. They're not always a paranormal cause. And the brain needs time to reprogram itself away from paranormal fear. So number two, Kate is secretly fascinated by these paranormal events and creates some fantasy in her mind about how she's going to interact with these beings and what they're going to do when they're in her home. These beings aren't controllable. They'll literally do what they want. So they come into her house and then they're not doing what she's expecting. And then she wants them to go, but she doesn't know how to get rid of them. And then she has to contact an energy clearer again. And she goes back to the same lady who's seeing repeated patterns in Kate's behaviour. Now, Kate's fear also created fear in the other family members, especially her youngest son, who was not sleeping simply because Mummy told him that there were demons in the house. You just don't do that. You just don't. It's just not something that you want to be doing, especially with a child. Now, paranoia and fear are two of the heaviest negative emotions that people can create, and they generate a lot of food for lower vibrational beings. This behaviour is typical for paranormal addicts, and it causes a vicious cycle of problems. Now, number three, it's an attention-seeking behaviour. People can become addicted to paranormal happenings because it keeps the excitement in their lives and the constant fear for the family. The people feel important in this situation, and the contact with a paranormal energy clearer or an energy worker feeds their need for attention. Number four, Kate is lonely. And she enjoys the interaction and the attention of the energy worker because she's someone to talk to who listens to her and fulfills some need that is not being fulfilled by the family, friends, or in other areas of her life. So 5, Kate possibly has lower vibrational energy beings within her energy field, messing with her mind and manipulating her emotions and her behaviours. And it would be beneficial for Kate to see a mental health professional to rule out any psychological issues, and then to see an energy clearer to detect and remove any paranormal or other influences. Because paranormal beings don't create what we do. The devil doesn't make you do anything. But lower vibrational beings can enhance what is already there. This is a key message that I tell people all the time. They often say, demons made me do it. The devil made me do it. I'm going, no, simply not. They'll enhance what is already there. So that tells me that Kate has underlying loneliness issues or mental health issues, or she's not feeling fulfilled in her life and has found a path to get attention through the paranormal. And that becomes a cycle because she's using that path to connect to people, but she's attracting the beings at the same time. So after looking at all these possibilities, my associate and I agreed on a strategy to assist Kate. She would talk to Kate about self-care and her life focus as a starting point. When they spoke, Kate said that she didn't actually have any hobbies or social activities other than caring for the family. And my work associate suggested that she adjust her daily habits and her routine to including filling her life with positive activities inside and outside the home, such as making new friends, exercising, going for walks, or starting a hobby. By changing her focus and filling her mind and time with positivity, joy, happiness, activities, Kate is filling her life with purpose and enjoyment. And this is going to move her thinking away from the paranormal. Now, as Kate was doing all of these things, she was also seeing her doctor and seeing a mental health counsellor, as per suggested. And after the necessary changes were made, the paranormal happenings stopped in Kate's home, in Kate's life, and my work associate didn't hear from her again. Changing her mindset helped Kate to refocus her thinking and to live a more fulfilled life. Now, before we look at our third story, I would like to give a shout out to Emily. Emily is a dear friend of mine, and boy, have we had some interesting paranormal experiences between us. And Emily really loves this podcast. She's written a lovely review for me that says, "This podcast talks about the paranormal world in a light and informative way. It is fun and relatable to listen to. Thank you, Anna." It's really nice to receive these reviews where people are understanding what I'm talking about. Right, I get reviews from all over the world. A lot of my clients will send me testimonials, which I add to my website, spiritualbeing.com.au. Now let's get into our third story. This is mine. This one is totally mine, and I am openly sharing my lifelong obsession, which I've called my inner paranormal junkie. Now, my whole life has been connected to the paranormal in one way or another. As a child, seeing and talking to spirits was a regular daily occurrence. And in my teens to 30s, I had a wild fascination with the unknown and did some pretty stupid things, such as creating a wipeable Ouija board and practicing spellcasting, which both created detrimental happenings in my home. Like, I constantly craved and explored paranormal experiences while I was being a mum and while I was working. So I had a pretty busy life. Look, I would watch paranormal movies, read books, I'd have dream experiences, I would practice said activities that I mentioned earlier, and I totally fantasized about ghostly connections that I'd had in the past or that were yet to come in the future. It totally enveloped my mind 24/7. Even when I was doing my mum duties, taking my kids to sports, playing with the children, doing activities with them, doing the house stuff and working, I still had that paranormal stuff going round and round and round in my mind constantly. There's no other way to say it. It is simply like you are a paranormal junkie. And when I was younger, I was unaware of my super sensitivity to the subtle energy world of invisible beings and how easily I could attract them. And I did constantly. There's a difference between watching paranormal movies and it's like, yeah, no worries, that's just a movie, then being energetically sensitive when you're watching it, it actually heightens your paranormal addiction. Now, I didn't use the word paranormal addiction until I was over 40. So my children had grown up by then, they're heading into young adulthood. So in the early days, it was just a simple, normal paranormal fixation that I thought most people had. Little did I know that I am super sensitive to these energy beings. Oh my goodness, I feel them everywhere. Supermarkets, at the bus stop. Oh dear. It's rather interesting. If you believe in these things, you'll find this podcast fascinating. I really do talk about them in a totally relatable way that nobody else does that I have listened to yet, because they are around us all the time. Let's not get sidetracked here. Now, I was saying that I constantly attracted these beings because I was super sensitive to them. Now, I suffered from really, really sleep-deprived nights for most of my life. I think, I'm 54 now, I think I only ever sleep maybe a maximum of 4 to 5 hours a night. That's like solid sleep. And this became the norm when I was younger. I went to the doctor, I had all my blood tests done, I saw a mental health professional, saw a counsellor, and they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. We can't find anything wrong with you. You're totally normal. And I'm like, okay, this must be just what everybody goes through. We all must just sleep, hardly at all. Anyway, I managed to be able to get through life on 4 to sometimes 5 hours sleep a night. Then many times I attempted to turn away from the paranormal because I had a family and I was working and I had a partner, but it was always there. It was always in the back of my mind and I was constantly drawn to it again and again. And as I've got older, it's just turned into a full-blown addiction. But I call myself a paranormal educator now with real-life experiences to back up my talk. And if you listen to this podcast enough, you will be able to relate to some of the things that I outline. I live a very simple life, home, family, go to the supermarket, might go out on the odd social occasion. The symptoms and things that I outline with driving, with electricity in the home, with the way these beings interact with us is so relatable. And I've learnt a lot from my many, many varied paranormal experiences, some good and some bad. And I now approach otherworldly happenings, as I call them, with the utmost respect and compassion. So this paranormal addict is now wiser and more level-headed in my maturity at being 54 years of age now. Now I'm going to share a really embarrassing experience with you. The following experience gave me insight into the power of the supernatural through a Ouija board. This was, I couldn't tell you exactly my age, but I would say I would have been early 20s when this happened. And it's been one that I use as an example all the time of how your intention to connect with the paranormal can be detrimental. So there's two parts to this story. And they both tell a tale of avoiding Ouija boards as a reliable, safe divination method. Now, the retelling of this experience really enters into the realms of totally dumb and stupid things to do. So I'm telling this tale to stop other people from thinking that Ouija boards are a safe divination tool. Some people use them. I can't stop you from using them. It's up to you. But I know from my experience that it wasn't good. So let's look into it. And I've called my experience Ouija board stupidity. Now, I wanted to experience using a Ouija board, and I had a family in the house, and I didn't want to openly use it in front of them. And I also had a partner. Now, when you're a paranormal addict, you're pretty sneaky. Like, seriously, you'll find ways to do things. People don't know what you're doing. Same with any other addiction. So I very sneakily created a Ouija board by covering a piece of white laminate board with clear contact. And on the clear contact, I wrote the letters of the alphabet and the words yes and no in the top left and right-hand corners, just like your traditional Ouija board that you see online, in the movies, in books. And when I'd finished, I could just wipe it off and just hide that piece of board under my bed, and no one would be the wiser. Now, when I was home alone one afternoon, I wanted to test out my Ouija board. I'd been waiting all week to do this, and today was the day. So I got it out and I wrote the alphabet and the yes and no on the panel of wood. And as I finished, the wall phone in our kitchen rang. Now, we're talking in the 90s here. You know, no mobile phones in our house at that stage. So I just simply went to answer the phone. 10 minutes later, as I approached the ironing board where I'd set up my Ouija board, right, it wasn't in the sun. It was in the corner of a room. There was no hot iron turned on, nothing. But yet, when I put my hand just probably about 30 centimetres above the board, it was hot. So where was the heat coming from? Now, in those days, I didn't understand like I do now. I was simply dabbling in things that I didn't know what I was doing. I'd intentionally opened a doorway. Right, you can create a Ouija board on a piece of paper and just write on it with crayons, pens, textures, doesn't matter. It is purely the intention to create this tool to connect with other dimensions. Now, I instantly panicked. Like, I wasn't good at self-control in those days. Oh no, my head was spinning and my heart was racing, and I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I'm like, oh no, I've got to go and pick up the kids from school soon. What am I going to do? So I grabbed a tissue and I just wiped off the words, and I hid the board under my bed. And I felt really sick. Like, I felt mentally sick, emotionally, and quite physically sick in the stomach, and my heart was kind of hurting. And I thought, what have I done? What have I done? Was going round and round and round in my mind. And that night, you're going to love this or not love this. This is why I'm telling this story. That night, there was a very tall, ominous-looking figure that appeared in the hallway near my bedroom door. Now, it just stood there, didn't move, but it was like it was looking at me. Like, I'd walk past the hallway door and I'd be looking up in the hallway. I could see it. Other family members were moving past it. The dog was moving past it. The dog actually knew it was there. The dog would look in that spot and look in the lounge room in a certain area that we'll talk about in the second part of this story. And like, the family members are like, you know, what's the dog looking at? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, maybe we've got spiritual visitors here. I used to call them ghosty visitors that would come once in a full moon. Now, what do I do with this thing that is in the hallway? I literally didn't know what to do with it. I had dabbled in something I didn't understand. Like, I am shaking my hand here as I am talking to you. I could see the outline of this tall, thin thing, and I could feel the strength of its evil presence. Like our house energy went from being warm and light and bright to being quite dense and dark in some locations. Now, over the next few days, this being followed me around the house. It would move around in the ceiling. It would knock on my bedroom walls behind my head and taunt me in my dreams. And I had even more sleepless nights than normal. Like it stayed away from the rest of the family, but it plagued me because, hello, I'm the one that opened the energetic doorway. So in some way, if I look at it now through my understanding, I would say it was energetically corded to me through some sort of psychic energy cording, which I know is a thing, which I'll be talking about in another podcast episode. And you know what? I've just got to suffer the consequences. I open the doorway, my problem, I've got to deal with it. And at that stage, from then on, I knew that I was super sensitive to these energy beings. Right? Now, we're going to return to this tale after I tell part 2 of this very foolish account, because both these stories are interconnected. Now, the next experience I called the portal in the front door. I visited a friend of mine named Lily after I was having these detrimental Ouija board experiences, because Lily understood the spiritual. We're about the same age, we kind of had about the same knowledge, and I could talk to her about this openly without worrying about her judging me. So I knew she'd understand this dark energy problem. We started talking about it and what had happened, and mid-sentence, Lily got up and left the room. And I'm like, oh, I wonder where she just left. So I'm just sitting there and I'm watching her coming down the hallway. And upon returning, she tucked under her arm her Ouija board wrapped in green velvet. I knew what this thing was. I'd seen it before. She was part of my inspiration to actually make my own. Oh, my goodness. The things we do, but I live to tell the tale. Now, Lily saw my noticeable recoil from this board as she unwrapped it proudly and sat it on the table, sort of rubbing her hands over it. She said, "Don't worry. I do this all the time. It'll be fine." And I kind of sat back in my seat. I didn't want to be near that board after my heat experience. So I cautiously sat there with my hands sort of folded in my lap, not wanting to touch that board. I watched Lily connect to someone through that board. And I kind of listened. Well, I had to. I was in the room. I didn't want to be rude and get up and leave because I'd come to Lily's house. We were having the conversation and she thought she was helping me. So I sat there and I intently listened as she talked with what I'm going to call an entity. But she called it a spirit guide. But now, no, it was an entity. And it told Lily to convey to me a way to release this dark energy being from my home. Now, this supposed spirit guide said that I needed to create a portal doorway in the front door of my home. The spirit talking through Lily's board told me to draw a particular symbol on my front door with a piece of clear quartz and to recite an incantation. Now, I was really uncomfortable about this and I should have just listened to my intuition. But no, my friend assured me that her spirit guide was genuine and it would all be okay. So I reluctantly agreed to carry out these instructions. Now, this paranormal addiction got me into such a lot of supernatural trouble in those early days. I tell you what, I am so embarrassed, but at least I can tell the stories to help other people out there hopefully not do the same stupid things I did. So that night, when my family was asleep, I snuck out to the lounge room and I quickly and calmly drew the symbols on the door while reciting the words to invoke the doorway opening. I waited for a magical flash or some sort of sign that said this had actually worked. But there was nothing. Nothing happened. I don't know what I expected. Unknowns to me at that time, instead of sucking out this detrimental dark energy being, I'd opened another dimensional entrance. Now, this one worked both ways. These dark energy beings could come and go from my house whenever they wanted because I'd opened a doorway again. Oh, I don't know. What do I do? What do I do with myself? Seriously. Okay, let's calm down. Now, this dark energy intruder from my Ouija board experience took up a rather cheeky position of standing next to the newly opened dimensional doorway, like some great looming guardian. And now I had two problems. What to do? Now, every night I would sit in my lounge chair, which was actually right next to the front door, and I would kind of watch that cloaked being out of my peripheral vision, and it was just standing there, this great looming presence, and family members would comment on how cold the room felt. Oh, I felt so totally useless and lost. And how was I going to get rid of this off-worldly intruder and close this portal doorway? And after a month of very chilly summer evenings in that room, Mary appeared in my life, a new friend. It was like management, which is what I call my spiritual support team, went, look, this woman's just making everything worse. We're going to have to send her someone to help. Oh, dear. So they sent me Mary, and Mary was amazing. Mary worked with Reiki energy healing. She sold crystals, and she also did spiritual clearings. So after I'd known Mary for a while, I said to her, look, I really need to talk to you about a problem, please, and please don't judge me. And after explaining my problem to Mary, she very calmly and quietly said to me that she would come to my house when my family were out. Mary understood, because Mary said that she had a level of paranormal addiction herself. And she didn't judge me, even though she did roll her eyes. Oh dear. I can still see her rolling her eyes when I was telling her what was happening in my house. So when Mary arrived, she came in the back door and she walked around the house very calmly and quietly. And she was describing her paranormal clearing process and how it worked. And she spent time exploring each room with this rather strong air of authority. You should have seen the way she walked around the house. It was like, wow, this woman is pumping out some strong body language. And she had this small brass bell, and it was one of her clearing tools, which she tinkled in every room. It made this really delicate sort of metallic sound until Mary came to the front door, where the bell would not ring at all. She asked me to stand next to it. She's like, come on, I want you to come over here. I want you to feel the denseness of the air in this spot and compare it to the warm, free-flowing air in the rest of the rooms. And I'm like, yep, I know. I've been living with this thing in my house for quite a while now. Oh, dear. And she very calmly observed this tall, looming, energetic presence. She slowly pulled a tourmaline pendant out of her bag, and while chanting a clearing prayer, she slowly swung the pendant up, down, and across the area where the dark energy intruder very firmly stood his ground. Now, I watched Mary. I was totally enthralled. As she chanted, she just kept chanting this incantation, and she focused on the dense energy near the front door. She wasn't afraid of it. She just simply focused on removing this energy being from my home. Now, within the next 5 to 10 seconds, this energy being just simply left with this sudden whooshing sound. And I couldn't believe how easy it was for Mary to actually shift this trespasser that had taken up residence in my home. Now, next we needed to focus on actually closing this portal so that that being and others didn't come into the house. Now, we both drew the symbol that I had originally drawn on the door, but we drew it backwards. And as we did this, Mary chanted her incantation, and I felt the energetic doorway shut with a slam. Now, this relief from this happening was immense, and I was so thankful that Mary could right the wrongs that I had created. And I learnt a lot from these two experiences about the power of intention, and I was now more aware of what I created with my thoughts, my words, and my actions. So I suppose you're wondering what happened to the piece of white laminate board. Well, I did a similar process to Mary, and I actually closed the portal doorway that was on that board. Even though I had wiped off the yes, the no, and all the letters, the energy was still present within that board. So I followed what Mary had done and actually closed the portal doorway that was present on that board, and then it went promptly into my wheelie bin, never to be spoken of again until now. Oh my goodness. I hope my kids don't listen to this. They'll know what their mother's been getting up to when they were at school as children. Oh, look, seriously, I hope you have learnt something about paranormal addiction today. It is a fascinating topic, and I may do more episodes in the future talking about the signs and the symptoms and any more information that I come across, just to help people understand how paranormal addiction works, how it can affect us, and why it attracts these energy beings to us. So in episode 20, we are talking about spirits. Now, I know spirits aren't technically dark energy beings, but they are part of the paranormal realm. And I want to share some of the reasons why they remain within the earth reality. I have 4 stories for you, so that's going to be a rather long episode. So thank you for joining me today. And if you want to share a paranormal experience or you've got a question, feel free to email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And if you feel the need for a paranormal house clearing, you will find my web address in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.